We're going to be crafting characters today, so stay tuned.
Hello, and welcome to the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, where we inform, encourage, and support Christian indie writers on their journey to publication. I'm Jamie Hirschberger. I write short fiction under the pen name J.R. Nichols.
Oh, you're muted, Jen.
I'm Jennifer Carl Tong, and I write historical Christian romance.
I'm Christina Catan, and I write Christian fiction.
And who are you? Let us know in the chat, which I do have to say, I am traveling and I'm casting from a remote location, so I cannot see the chat. So if any of you want to share what's up, hopefully Jen and Tina can clue us in by scanning that chat box. We typically have a lot of people chatting.
This morning already, we have Purpose Behind the Pen there in the chat saying good morning to us, as well as Catherine is there as well. Good morning to you, ladies.
Yes, if you're able to join us on Fridays at 10 a.m. Eastern, we would love to have you. Our chat is always full of extra special good advice and camaraderie, and we encourage you to take part in that. If you can't join us live, we encourage you to watch our podcast later and then spread the word about it. Tell your friends, tell anybody that you know who's ever even thought about being a writer, and let them know that we're here to help them along their journey because we'd love to see them. We do have a Facebook group that you can go to for a little bit more shenanigans and encouragement. We've had 2 writing groups that I know of have started from this podcast. I know Jason has started a writing group and Tina has started one. So if you're looking for fellowship among writers, Christian writers, you can hopefully find it on one of our platforms. So do join us. And
Yes.
So we start our episodes off with a segment called What's Up, where we go around the virtual table and we say, what is going on with us? What's going on with you, Jen?
Well, I have been spending some time this week prepping for November. And if you guys have been with us for any length of time, you know that NaNoWriMo used to be a thing for us. And because of issues with NaNoWriMo, we're all kind of like stepping away from that as well. But Tina was the one that had mentioned to me to look at there were other options out there, people that were trying to fill that hole. And so I've been looking at AutoCrit. We're going to talk about AutoCrit a little bit today. But for me, I have been just kind of taking some of their courses, doing some reworking of my outline for book 1 of Widows of the West. I'm getting a little bit more excited about my characters. And yeah, so I think we'll talk about that more later. I don't want to get too in the weeds right now because there's like a lot to talk about that I've the different features that come with AutoCrit. But again, you also really to use it well, you have to pay for it. So don't run out and pay for it yet unless you just have Booko money. Let me and Tina be the guinea pigs and come back to you and tell you.
Well, I
whether or
already
not
paid for it. Like I paid for like the lifetime
Right.
membership.
Right.
So
Which I think is what I'm going to end up doing. But again, just keep tuned in. We're gonna probably talk about it some more. But that's what I'm on to is working on my outline and prepping for really jumping in November to get some writing done.
Yeah, and it's interesting to talk about just in general what alternatives have come up. And I wonder if anybody else has decided if they wanted to drop into the chat what they're doing. That would
we
be
do have some what's ups. Purpose Behind the
Yeah.
Pen says that she's currently experiencing writer's block. Yeah, she's enjoying her vacation with her husband. That's not writer's block. That's a vacation. Put the writing away. It's fine to like not write when you're on vacation. Like we completely give you permission. Like enjoy your hubby, enjoy the
Yes.
time away. Yes.
And look for strange characters when you're out and
Yes.
about.
There you
and
go.
Use them as inspiration for when you get home.
Mm-hmm.
Then you sit down to write. I just heard some advice the other day that I think I'm going to try next time, that you should write a list down of everything that absolutely will not work
That's a great
in
idea.
when you're stuck in your story. And
Mhm.
out of that list, suddenly what will work will pop into your head.
When you mentioned that the other day, it kind of reminded me of K.M. Weiland's the what ifs that I do, where you sit down, you just do what if this happened? What if this? And you just like there's no rules. Like what if aliens showed up to, the old west? Like, there's
I
no
think
rules.
somebody did that
I think so too.
movie.
But like I would not do that. That does not fit me or my writing, right?
Like,
So like even the ridiculous stuff goes down, but it's crazy how when you just kind of just start free, like flowing that kind of stuff, like whether it's like the what ifs or the what won't work, what it triggers in you. So that's I think a great idea.
Do we have any more WhatsApps in the chat?
Yep. Dawn Robertson says, "Good morning. I'm an aspiring voiceover actor and love to write. I'm so glad to be here early with you. It's 7 a.m. here in Washington. Christ is King." Well, we're so glad to have you here too, Dawn. 7 a.m. You're my girl. I'm a morning person, so
I'm curious where in Washington you are. My mother lives in Port Orchard, so I spent a month there in August. So
yeah.
And I'm curious to know if she's considered ever narrating audiobooks. And
Mm.
she wants to do voiceover work.
Yeah. SL Parent is here as well. She says, "Good morning." And Catherine's what's up is ideas are popping. The next book is flowing, and Reese's coffee creamer is delicious.
Oh,
Girl. Okay.
Mm.
So I gave up coffee because this is tea. I'm drinking apple cinnamon tea right now, and it is delicious. I feel very autumnal right now. But because I'm giving up, I haven't done sugar really, or not supposed to have done sugar for a long time. But I've been doing sweeteners, like the healthy stuff, like monk fruit and stevia. And Tina and I have been kind of on a similar journey. And I've learned that, and this is a whole nother rabbit hole, but that I shouldn't be doing sweeteners either, because even though it doesn't trigger my blood sugar level, it does trigger a dopamine hit that makes me want other sweets. And I can't do coffee without it being dessert like. I've tried. It's just not my thing.
Mhm.
Tea I can. I don't need anything in my tea. So
For me, they
anyway,
trigger like cravings for all the like baked goods.
yes.
So I just
Yes.
can't do it.
But my girls don't have a problem. Like you guys saw them yesterday. They love Starbucks. And so today, Tim Hortons Starbucks, they don't care. Today we went through the drive-through at Tim Hortons to get them a donut before drop them off. And um right giant sign right there was a Reese's peanut butter frappe. And I was just like, oh Lord, give me strength, dear Jesus. It just looks so good. So yeah, I really want some peanut butter chocolate something
Do you know
right
what I
now.
had? Do you want to know what I had for breakfast this morning? It wasn't
If it'll help me.
Reese's. I took 4 ounces of yogurt and an ounce of peanut butter and whipped it all together.
Okay.
And then I cooked bananas in a pan with vanilla and salt and a little bit of baking soda. I'm not sure what the baking soda does, but it
Okay.
doesn't come out the same if you don't put it in there.
Okay.
And then I wanted 6 ounces of fruit. So I added blueberries to the yogurt to make up 6 ounces, and I just mixed it all up. And then I put some instant coffee on top.
Ooh, that
It was,
actually sounds
it's delicious.
right. Catherine says she only has creamer about once a week, so this is a treat. Usually it's just bulletproof coffee. Yep, I know what bulletproof coffee is too. I used to do it. Yeah, you're my hero, because if I started doing coffee again, it would just not be able to stop. So
Yes, I'm like a crack addict. If I start eating sugar or flour, I won't stop. I'll just like go on this binge. And 20 pounds later, you'll find me in the corner with a box of cookies or something.
And might I just say, Miss Tina, you are looking really good. I saw you
Oh,
yesterday in
thank
person for
you.
the first time in a while, and I meant to tell you that in person, but you're looking really good. So
I feel good.
that's even more
Like, I
important.
don't even care how I look. I feel good.
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Dawn says that she'll be starting her first audiobook before the end of the year. She's nervous and excited. She's in Marysville. Do you know where that is?
Nope.
Okay. She's a little far away from Portland, but not too far.
Port Orchard, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Port Orchard. Sorry.
So, Jamie, what's up with you?
Well, I did travel recently, and when we were talking just recently here right now about finding characters while you're on vacation, there was a whole lot of that going on. This was not my original What's Up, but I can do both. They're quick. So this one pilot I saw come off the like gateway, and he went over and talked to the girl at the ticket counter. And I'm looking at him, and as a mother, I could tell this was like a younger guy. and he had a real younger guy look, and he
Uh-huh.
wasn't extremely tall. And so it appears to compensate, he had grown this mustache that was like, would put Tom Selleck to shame. And it was just so obvious that he's like, no one's going to call me a baby, you know? And I just found that to be just a really entertaining possibility for characters, right? Imagine never being taken seriously because everybody just, you're small and everyone just, you have a baby face, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So then the other thing I want to share with you is I was walking in the airport, as you do, and there was a little machine on a table sticking out of a spot, and it was like, let a robot paint your nails. I was like,
What?
Yeah. So it was like, it looks like a big 3D printer is what it looks like, really. And a lady
Mhm.
was getting it done. So I stood there and I watched her get it done. And you stick your nail in the machine, and this little, like, it looks like a white out pen will come and
Uh-huh.
go and it applies nail polish like perfectly because it's like sensing where your skin ends and your nail begins.
What?
Yes. Now, I never do my nails because if it starts to flake even a little bit, I'm biting it off, I'm picking it off.
Gotcha.
And
Uh-huh.
then I look like a hobo for, you know,
Right.
but I decided I would do it because it was within 24 hours of the event that I was traveling for. And I was like, I'll look great for 24 hours. And then if it smears, I don't care.
Right.
So I gave it a shot. And for 17 bucks, like, it came out okay. I mean, I've had to do touch ups, but I mean, it, you know,
Nice.
it
Yeah.
saved
I
my
love that.
nails.
That's my color right there.
I know it's a very pretty color.
Yeah. And so I noted that it was like raisin, whatever.
Mhm.
And so I was like, I only have to keep these nails nice for, and they give you a little pot of nail polish remover, and they give you like a cuticle thing and all this.
All for $17?
Yes. And then I
That's
tipped
so
the lady
cheap.
3. So like, you got to go sign in with the lady, and the lady
Uh-huh.
like helps to make sure the machine doesn't like eat your finger or whatever. And so I did tip her 3. So it was like 20, but
That's
you
a whole
know, the
nother
manicure
novel.
there was 50, you know, to see a
Right.
person and have them do it. And if you're not
Yeah.
doing gel or
Right.
Yeah. That
so,
reminds me of when I was in the Seattle airport. I have a bone spur in my knee, and I have super bad arthritis in my ankle where I had broken my ankle just walking on the treadmill. So
Ooh.
when I go to the airport and have to go a long way to a gate, I get wheelchair service. And
nice.
helpful hint, you get through security in like a quarter of the time if you have an airport employee pushing you in a wheelchair.
Life hack.
Pretend. I'm just kidding. So I get through security at the Seattle airport, and the little guy that was pushing me takes me over to this little area, and they get me out of the like regular wheelchair, and they
Mhm.
put me on this robotic wheelchair. And the lady comes up and goes, "What gate are you going to?" And she punches it in, and the wheelchair just goes. And I'm
What?
like, nobody's pushing me. And if people are in the way, it stops and it goes, "Please step aside." And this wheelchair took me to my gate. I got out, got my stuff off the bag, and it turned around and went back to the beginning.
If it had been me, I would have been doing things like this when I was going through and, like, acting like I was Professor X. Like, 'cause he, like, has, like, a robotic wheelchair. Anyway, sorry. I digress.
Well, we're within steps of self-driving cars, I guess.
I guess so.
Well, now they have self-driving wheelchairs at
So meanwhile, I was
Seattle.
traveling with somebody, and I was like, "Oh, look, it looks like you did your toes." And she got all worked up because apparently she's been trying to like take the nail polish off. And I was like, "Well, I have nail polish remover," and she's like, "Well, I kind of need some on a cotton ball or whatever." And so I'm like, "No problem." And I took my finger and jammed the cotton ball into the nail polish remover. Like, I only had to keep my nails nice for 24 hours. And here's me, like, let me be helpful and remove the nail polish from my one finger
Oh
by
gosh.
trying to help you. But fortunately, I remembered that this was like a raisin color, and we
Uh-huh.
ran to Dollar General and we got a bottle of raisin polish, and I was able to touch it up. But good grief.
Yeah. I love that color. It looks really pretty. I
Thanks. So,
found a color, not that we're giving beauty advice, but I found Essie nail polish, which I'd never tried before, but you know, all the Rite Aids went out of business and everything was 90% off. So I bought some, and I bought this pumpkin orange, not like a bright obnoxious, but just a beautiful orange color. And that is my go-to color. And Essie, you only need to put one coat on. and
Nice.
and it dries super fast. So like I don't care if I have to polish my nails twice a week because it takes me a minute and then it dries really fast. So I would say that my nails had grown, but I just broke 2 yesterday. So, but anyway.
I have diabetes. Mine crack and peel and do all kinds of ugly things to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tina, did you have a WhatsApp? Did we not get your WhatsApp yet?
I haven't gone yet, no. Although I did talk a lot about the Seattle airport. But my WhatsApp is I got to see Jamie yesterday, and I'm very happy about it.
Whoop whoop, me too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I got to hug her. It was nice.
Yeah, it's one thing to see you on screen. It's another thing to see you in person. It's been a long time.
Yeah, and I got to see Jason also, who is a
Yeah.
listener, and my friend Joy, who also writes. And then I had some friends from my other communities come out. It was a really good turnout. I was happy about that. So good to see everybody.
Yeah, it was fun.
All right, so we're going to jump into the topic du jour. And as Jen said, she hinted a little bit as to what we were going to be talking about. It's autocrit. And so let me back up for just a moment and kind of paint a picture for you. You've created a character that you love, either in sprints or just as part of your brainstorming, or maybe you even, as part of your plotting, this character has occurred to you, but you're not really sure what to do with them in the context of a story that is cohesive and moves forward at an appropriate pace. You don't want them like fishing for 2 chapters, right, Jen? Like,
right. Right, exactly.
But what is an appropriate role for this terrific character that you've discovered and want to put in your book? Well, Tina has brought to our attention that the people of Autocrit have an answer for us. And what is it? It's called their character type or role. What is it, Tina?
Well, they have 4 core characters and 4 thematic characters. And when I first heard about it, it was in the context of a mystery writing course that I'm taking. And I thought, oh, yeah, those characters are in mysteries. But then I went and started watching another course on just plain plot craft. And the guy said, these are the 8 characters in every story. So it's like, oh, it's not just mystery. So it was and I have always written fantasy, and I've always used like the characters in the hero's journey. Like they have certain types of characters in a hero's journey, and they're called something completely different than this. And so this is completely new to me. So I thought it'd be fun to talk about it.
Okay, and we're going to talk about what these are. And as I was reviewing the outline, which thank you both for once again doing the heavy lifting, and I feel like you had kind of briefly explained that they are you have one and then you have the other, and they're almost like a salt and pepper to each other. So is it ever advisable to not have all 8 and have one dangling around that doesn't have a match before we get into what they are?
I would say that they recommend that you have the opposites in every story. If you're going to have one of them, you should have the other one. And the most obvious ones are the antagonist and the protagonist.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us have heard of those. Jen, you've heard of antagonists and protagonists, right?
For sure. Even with romance, we tend to. So I don't want to get too far off topic, but I do want to talk about romance and protagonists, but later after we talked about this a bit. But yes, it's a little bit different, I think.
Yeah, and it was really funny because I had a hard time keeping these 2 straight as a younger writer,
because pro seems like it's positive.
Yes.
Right? So that should make it like really easy to remember, but I also struggled too. So
and then
pro and anti.
Yeah.
Yes. And I guess what the issue was is I almost feel like, well, who's driving the story, which made me want it to be the end, whatever. Okay, but the point is protagonist, main character with a clear concrete want that's trackable to the audience. And again, we do have to credit Autocrit with what we're telling you because this is like what they say. Okay.
Yes.
And then there's the antagonist. That's the obstacle to the protagonist. And again, I think everybody kind of knows about these. But then we're going to venture into
I did want to say one thing about the antagonist that I don't know if it was new to me, but I just hadn't thought about it because he was talking about an antagonist in a mystery. And suddenly I just had like this light bulb moment where he said the antagonist does not have to be the bad guy. The antagonist does not have to be the murderer. It's the person who's keeping the protagonist from getting what they want. So it could be the guy from internal affairs who's trying to get you to lose your job, or the person who's trying to keep you from solving this mystery.
Mm.
And so
Hmm.
that was, to me, that was a new way of thinking about an antagonist, that it doesn't have to be like the evil bad guy.
That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Food for thought.
Yeah.
Now, this second pair, very interesting. So the titles of them are relationship, and that's in the same column as protagonist, and then distraction, which is in the same column as antagonist. So we have relationship and distraction. How do they play off each other, and what even does that mean?
So the relationship character is like Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings. He's like the mentor. In a mystery, it's the person that gives the detective food for thought that suddenly becomes an epiphany later, helps him solve the case. In my mystery, it's going to be my detective's pastor who he goes to when he's struggling. And then the distraction character is trying to lead the protagonist away from what they need, and it's usually for immoral reasons.
And it's not even necessarily conscious thought. I'm trying to get in the protagonist's way. It's just what that's what they serve in your story.
That's their role. Like they could like let's just take a murder mystery. The person could be absolutely convinced that this person over here did it.
Mm-hmm.
And because this person over here did it, I'm going to insert myself into this case and make sure that they look at this person.
Hmm.
And that could, and not because they don't like them or whatever. Usually they have some kind of immoral thing going on, um in their the way that they go about it. So that would be the distraction character. And of course,
Okay.
that's the opposite of the relationship character who's trying to help the detective find the right answers and mentor them. And I'm thinking of this in a mystery, but it could work for any story.
Well, and I think that the part that would confuse me is this whole idea that there's intent. I don't think that the character has to be written with the intent to help or to harm, because
Right.
I'm thinking of those scenarios where the goofy bartender or the silly bakery lady or whatever just happens to say something that cracks the
Hmm.
case wide open, and their
Exactly.
intent was not to be helpful. And likewise, the person who's convinced that the wrong person did it, they don't have the intent to thwart the protagonist. They just do it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But like I just go and think back to all these crime dramas that I watched where like the father of the murdered girl goes out and tries to kill the main suspect, but that's not the person who did it. Like
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing.
So then the father would be the distraction character
In that case,
in
yeah.
that case. Yeah.
Well, I love this. Okay. And those are the four core characters. Okay. And now we're going to move on and talk about thematic characters. But these words core and thematic, do you understand why they're called that and what's the difference?
The core characters are characters that you really if you want a really strong story, you should have these four characters in your story because
Oh,
they make up the core of the characters in your story. And so
okay.
and of course these are roles that these characters play. And so the person might just it might, like in a romance, it could be the distraction character could be the person who's trying to set the girl up with the wrong person. Or, like that's just
Mm-hmm.
I just came up with that at the top of my head. Obviously,
No.
I am not a romance writer. But
Yeah.
yeah. So that's why it's core. And thematic doesn't they don't necessarily have to be in the story, but they help to strengthen the story. And especially if you have characters that you're not sure what to do with them or what their role is, and you feel like they're not strong enough, then you could assign them one of these roles and say, okay, what can they do to make them be this thematic character?
Can you have one of these core characters, such as the distraction, be something inanimate, like a big tornado that's coming, or like, do you know what I mean? Or do these have to be basically like people?
I would say it could be like, you know how we often talk about the environment being a
Mm-hmm.
character? Like the environment could be your antagonist,
Mm-hmm.
or it could
Okay.
be your distraction character that's keeping you, like sending you in the wrong direction or whatever.
So that's
Okay.
some of what I wanted to say without interrupting what we were doing
Yeah.
here, but let me just really quickly. So the core characters, it makes total sense with me, and I agree with it to a certain point because I've also been taking like some mini courses with autocrit, and I agree with a lot of what they're saying, but some of it I feel like there needs to be maybe some more influence from romance writers because they were insisting that there's always one protagonist. Like, even if you have more than one point of view, there's always one protagonist, which I agree. But in romance, it is very possible to have two equal protagonists. It is a very common thing in romance to have two who have their own character arcs. The both of their stories move the story forward. It just where they collide becomes the romance. That's very common. Now, is it also possible that you would have two a male and a female love interest, but one has a stronger pull on the story? Yes. So then that can be argued. But I think that to say that there's only always just one protagonist is not looking at every genre specifically. And then when I look at this for antagonists, yes, you can have an antagonist in romance. Absolutely. But in general, with romance, the antagonist is the the girl feeling like she has to go back to the big city. She can't stay in the country because she's no longer a country girl. Or um the feeling of inferiority because her high school boyfriend became a big football star, and so she'd never be with him because she feels inferior. So, like, yes, antagonist for sure can be a like a state of mind. It can be a natural disaster. It can be basically anything that prevents the main characters from getting together. But it could be a person, it could be a rival. It could be like a girl that's trying to get with a guy instead of you, and whatnot.
Yes,
So
because it seems to me you would talk about well, you call them disasters, and
yeah.
it's basically like the circumstances. The
Mhm.
circumstances become the antagonist in that case, right?
Right. Yes, but I do think if we're gonna stick with this being a character, it needs to be a larger portion of the story. It needs to be a larger thing that is throughout the whole story. Like, if we were to look at Pride and Prejudice, we know that Lizzie was definitely very prejudiced against those that had money, and that it follows through the whole story. It isn't just at like the disaster moments, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. So it's
Yeah.
it's a big part of what is keeping her from her romantic interest. So even though that's
Love
not a
that.
romance, that's a whole
That's a
nother
really
story.
good
But
point. Yeah.
That
yeah.
is. And I think it starts to speak a little to theme, which is a
Hmm.
great segue into the second thematic characters. Now, there are also four of these, two in one column and two in another. And our first ones are, oh, and it's interesting the way the chart looks, they both have like a positive and a negative, like poles
Yeah.
on a battery. And so I guess that's why you want to think about keeping both, because you can't have battery that has only a positive. You need a positive and a negative. And so the positive under thematic is reason, and the other is emotional. Wow, that's interesting. So what do we know about a reason character?
Well, in the case of a mystery, for example, and I'm only using mystery because that's the way I've been thinking
Sure.
about these,
Mm-hmm.
is they're the person who wants to use logic. It has to be logical. Like, we're gonna go at this in a logical manner, and we're gonna do it that way. The emotion character is the opposite. Like, they're purely running on emotion, and so everything they do is motivated by their strong emotion about what happened.
Hmm.
Now, I'm sorry, but you're talking, and I'm starting to think like, well, that means one, two, three, four. You have six characters. And I know for sure that I've read books that do not have six characters in my face that are main characters. So, is
Mhm.
there a chance that some of these roles are doubled up by
They
characters in a
can
book?
be. They can
Okay.
be. Yeah,
Hmm.
one character could have multiple roles, but usually you would want to keep them either on the negative side or the positive side. I don't know. I guess you could probably do both, but I don't know how that would work.
No,
Plus,
I think you're right. I think that probably a character could play more than, but you still have to have the balance somewhere over here, I would think. Like you
Plus,
can't
I
have it
think
be.
sorry.
No, go.
I think using the term main character is also maybe problematic too, because these characters can also be filled by minor characters.
Mhm.
Which I think is what's so good about this, looking at this, is that if you feel like your story isn't full enough or not long enough, maybe you just haven't like developed enough characters and side characters to make the story feel not just interesting but real. Because when we go out in the real world, like when Tina, Jen, and Jamie are living our lives, it's not just Tina, Jen, and Jamie. We have coworkers, we have kids, we have people in relationships with, we have our church. Like there's all these other, not that you'd put them all in the story, but they all flavor what's happening in our lives, so that's the same thing with the story. So
Love that.
maybe, yeah.
So
And that's
then
why they say core and thematic, because the
Right.
thematic are not the main characters.
and then you have an emotional character who's the polar opposite of the reason character.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah,
said the reason character is logical.
yes. So like in a detective show if any detective show you watch, it's like you see the two partners and they're
Mhm.
partners in the cop car, and one of them is like angry and I'm going to go find this guy and beat him up, and the other person's like, no, now wait a minute. We have to
Mm.
go by the book. Like that would be a perfect example of the reason and the motion character interacting with each other.
Mm.
Yeah, and possibly why, you send people into at least two people to go and do something so that there can be some balance, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then finally, our final pair, our final dynamic duo or whatever, under thematic characters, we've got a support character under the positive side and an opposition character under the negative side. What about these two?
Okay, so the support character is completely loyal and supportive of your main character. They want them to get what they want, what they need. They are on team whoever your main character is. 100%. Opposition, of course, is the opposite. They doubt. They put doubt into the main character's mind about whether they can get what they need or want. They put doubt into the reader's mind about whether they can, and they just don't feel that they can succeed, and they're skeptical about the protagonist's ability to even know what they want or need. Like that can be, so that basically opposite of support. And like in my mystery, that's going to be my detective's wife.
Mm.
Because he couldn't solve their own daughter's kidnap and murder, that he's not capable of solving anybody's kidnap and murder. That kind of idea. And you can have a character that starts out as a support character that becomes an opposition character.
Mm.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's helping me because again, I mean, I'm just trying to like kind of these characters all exist and whatever, and it's on the fly and I'm just kind of thinking. But to take this notion that one character could start out one way and become the other way is also a helpful way to think about it as you're trying
Mhm.
to find these characters and stories.
Yeah.
Tina, have you learned, like, can you have more than one reason character and more than one emotional character?
For
And
sure.
okay,
Yeah. And
because
characters can be more than one thing too. So
right.
that's why you could have and your antagonist, like okay, for a mystery, your murderer, let's say in a murder mystery, doesn't have to be your antagonist, but it's probably one of your negative characters.
Mm.
It's probably either the emotion character or the opposition or the distraction character. Most often the distraction character, if it's not the antagonist in like a murder
Interesting.
mystery. And
Interesting.
another rule that I learned is you want to introduce the core characters in the first half of your book. It doesn't matter when you introduce the thematic characters.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Again, thinking about Pride and Prejudice. So when you're looking at support and opposition, clearly Mr. Bennet is support and Mrs. Bennet is opposition, because Mrs. Bennet was trying to marry her off to Mr. Collins, right? Because he just
Mhm.
loved her boiled potatoes. But Mr. Bennet was not having it, right? So you have that. But then later, for sure, I would say that Lady Catherine de Boot was definitely an opposition, and then probably the opposite of her would be Jane, because Jane was encouraging her
Hmm.
with Mr. Darcy, and then Lady Catherine was like just the opposite. So maybe you could even have different characters assigned per act.
Yeah.
Like, I
And
talk
I
about
would say Mrs.
disasters.
Bennett could also be said to be a distraction character
Yeah.
because she was trying to get her to marry the wrong person.
Yeah, so maybe these thematic characters are going to be different people depending on what act you're in or what's happening, and
Hmm.
because if we talk about plotting and we talk about what happens in at the end of the first act, in the middle of the second act, and at the end of anyway, at the end of the second act, like, they could be had totally different people because your goals are different, right? Your characters, they're moving through their arc, and they are different than they were at the beginning of the story. So of course your characters that are the thematic characters might need to change in order to cause more friction, or to cause
Hmm.
more pushback to what's happening in the story. So
Right. And I wouldn't use this like okay, I need to figure out what these 8 characters are in my story.
right.
Obviously, you probably need to know the protagonist and the antagonist.
Yeah.
But for me, it's more like, are all my characters filling one of these roles so
Right.
that
Yeah.
they're not just a superfluous character that is not
Yeah.
moving your story forward?
Right, because if it's not moving the story forward, then it's just wasted paper,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Well,
that's
that's a
awesome.
very tidy bow to put on that little package of information. Wouldn't you agree? I think we've sort of covered the topic. Any final words about it, or are we ready to move on?
I think we're
I
ready
would
to move on.
Yeah, I would just like to say that, if you are interested, we're not getting any money from Autocrit, at least not at this point. We're not we're not partnering with them, but they do right now have half off for the first month if you would like to go and try some of their stuff, and they do have some AI things in there, not generative AI, but more like help AI, for not just for writing, but for editing. I'm sure we'll talk about over the next few months. But there's lots
Mhm.
of stuff like this on there too. So it's helpful, especially if you feel like you're stuck. So
And they have that 90-day novel challenge that
yes.
they're doing instead of NaNoWriMo that I really like because it's not, you don't have to do it in the month of November.
hmm
Like they're starting it in the month of November, but it's 90 days to write a novel. And I think it's a really good idea.
So technically, it started in October. The writing is supposed to happen in November, and editing happening in December. However, so prep in October, writing November, editing in December. But again, it's 90 days. So if you, one of the things that I was in, one of the videos I was, what was it called? Like a live meetup,
Hmm.
whatever. He was saying if you're gonna do more than 50,000 words, you need to start writing right now. Like, so there's no like rules that you have to only write in November like how we used to have. So
Right.
it's spreading it all the work over 90 days. So
Yeah. And there is a Christian version of that's very, very similar to NaNoWriMo called, I think it's called QNO, QUNO. I'll put a link in the show notes because I might be wrong on that title. I should have wrote it down. Um, but it's Christian based and it's very similar to NaNoWriMo.
awesome. Piper says, I think it would be helpful if we had a thread in the Facebook group identifying these character types in popular TV shows and movies. Yeah, that's a great idea. People can we'll start the thread. And you guys can just in the comments just uh throw up there some characters that you
Don't
think
throw up.
fit these. Right. I know. As soon as it came out of my mouth, I was like, how do I fix this? And then I said it again. So I guess I'm just owning it.
But throw it up
All
there.
righty. And so, what I hope you will also own, I hope you owned this writing prompt for the feeding of the
Yay.
backs portion of this show. So, what this is 15 minutes before the show starts or whenever, we set a timer and we write like the wind and don't look back. We just write and write to whatever the prompt is for the week. And then we take those stories immediately to you without polishing them, without editing them. And for that reason, we've agreed to only give positive feedback for these pieces. Although we have been known to like encourage each other to do this or that, there have been tweaks proposed in the past. That's because we're not as vulnerable as we used to be. We're pretty thick skinned. But if you're just starting to write, you don't have to show your sprints to anybody if you don't want to. The point is just to get you writing. So set a timer and write to the prompt. If you want to share it, put it in our Facebook. We'd love to read it. Jen, what was our prompt today?
So today's prompt was a sentence that you were supposed to use, and I say we're supposed to because I did not.
Oh,
It was inspirational to me, but I did not actually use the sentence as is. So
we'll forgive you.
thank you.
But,
All right, book 2.
The sentence as it.
Whoops, I can hear myself echoing.
Yeah, I know. For
somewhere.
some reason, our show is playing on my other machine. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I
That's
stopped
okay.
it.
All right. A loud rap sounded at the front door, and Loretta nearly shed her skin from the fright of it. How long she had sat at the tiny kitchen in silence, she wasn't certain, but when she peeked out through the curtains, the sun no longer hid among the trees on the horizon. "Who is it?" she asked through the still closed door. "It's Cade, Loretta. Open the door." Cade. Loretta's heart skipped a beat. She quickly threw open the door to find the man she had just been thinking about standing right in front of her. I wasn't expecting you," she stuttered. Her hand flew to her hair instinctively, but Cade didn't seem to notice. "We've come to take you to church." "Church," she repeated, but it was the word "we" that stood out most to her. She peeked around Cade, his hulking figure eclipsing the world beyond the front door, and saw her sitting in the front of the buckboard parked in front of the tiny house. The excitement she had felt at the sight of her first love standing on the front porch dwindled at the sight of his true love waiting for him to return to the seat next to her. Loretta's spine straightened a little. "I wasn't planning to attend church, thank you." Cade shrugged. "Suit yourself." He abruptly turned and walked toward the buckboard. The woman named Colleen spoke so softly to him that Loretta couldn't hear the exchange, but she did notice the visible drop in Cade's shoulders right before he turned back toward the house. "Loretta," he began, "we would like for you and Amelia to join us for church and then to, and then to join us at the ranch for the afternoon meal." "Why?" Loretta asked. Cade scowled. "What do you mean, why?" "It's been a week, Cade. 7 days since you banished me and my daughter to this hovel. Why all of a sudden do you want us to socialize with you?" Cade sighed. "First of all, you haven't been banished. Secondly, I wouldn't call this a hovel. Colleen spent many years fixing it up, and while she lived here, 3, 2, 1.
I like how you described that. Obviously, Colleen told him, "You get back over there." But you said that she couldn't hear the exchange. I mean, it was just a few words, but it painted an entire like mini scene within the scene. I love that.
And it's obvious that Cade was not happy because he's like scowling and his shoulders are drooping, and it's like, the little woman told you.
Yes, and you didn't have to say Cade was not happy.
Yeah, that was really good.
Very good show, not tell.
Thanks.
How did you feel about this piece?
I hate it.
Why?
Because I wrote it last night. For those of you that don't know, I had something I had to do this morning. And so I was like kind of like just running in at the last minute before we started podcasting. So I sprinted last night. And Jen, who writes at night, is a different person than Jen, who writes fresh and perky in the morning. And I feel like it's a whole lot of like said. Like I feel like there's not a lot of show, and like there's things I already want to change, and
Well,
like
the good news is you can change it.
right, exactly.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
the whole
sprint.
point.
It's a sprint. So I wrote, right? So
Yay!
Right.
yay for me. I wrote. So that's it. But thank you guys for the feedback. I appreciate it. All right, Jamie, your turn. You're up.
All right. So
And she never actually said what the prompt was, so you might want to.
I'm so sorry.
I did put it in the chat, but just for those who are just listening, maybe you should say what it is.
Well, you're about to hear it twice because it's the first sentence of my sprint also. So the prompt is 2 seats were vacant. And here's my sprint. 2 seats were vacant that Thanksgiving. And in spite of the fact that the recliner was positioned in the perfect spot for absorbing the comforting heat radiating off the fireplace, and the straight back cane chair was set on the porch with just the right view of the tobogganing hill, no one sat in them. It was as if the ghosts of the previous occupants took up a physical space that made the revelers not only refuse to sit in the seats, but to also give them a wide berth. No one knew what to say when little Brendan, the wisps of hair on his forehead waving gently in the breeze that cooled their faces, pointed a mittened hand in the direction of the upright seat, and said the first word any of them could have plainly understood: Grandma. Uncle Peter broke the stunned silence by throwing his beer can down into the snow and muttering an expletive-riddled sentiment about getting the sled on down the hill already. And the spell was broken. Everyone scrambled into position and chattered and laughed as though they hadn't just been reminded of their sorrows. Catherine wasn't on the hill to hear all of this. She was, as they were, aware of the chair, but only as much as it was in her line of sight as she stared up at the tobogganers from the kitchen window. She knew the other women would have resented being left inside to deal with the turkey, but the little secret she kept made her more than happy to stay inside where it was warm and dry. Well, relatively dry anyway, she told herself, raising an eyebrow in the direction of the sink full of suds and soaking dishes. She chastened herself for not keeping up with her clean-as-you-go mantra, but then remembered Doc Smith's admonishment to take regular breaks if she could, and how following this prescription had thrown her out of her natural rhythm. How goes it, Peach? Buford Spry appeared from down the hall, presumably returning from the lavatory, rubbing his hands and sniffing the air. Shooey, smells like a feast brewing in here. He lifted the pots and peeked in, all except for the gurgling one that held the potatoes. Catherine shooed him away from that one. I tell you what, Peach, if I didn't have me my crepe myrtle, I'd snap you up in a heartbeat. Catherine grinned at the familiarness of this banter. Myrtle Spry was the most accomplished homemaker in the valley, and everyone knew that Buford had never and could never love anyone else. Even Buford knew he was still helplessly smitten with her after 35 years, and he loved to make them giggle by pretending he was in a hair's breadth of running away with any of them any chance he could. Oh, Buford, if you only knew, Catherine said, with what she immediately recognized was too much wistfulness in her tone. She saw his eyes drop to the hands she wrung and then flick up again to meet her gaze. What's going on, Peach? What do you mean? Come on now, you and me's been pals for most of our lives, and you can't deny something just ain't right how you're acting. Why ain't you up there on that hill? Christine thought about saying, why aren't you? But knew it would be a cruelty. Myrtle, and then I couldn't go on because...
Oh my gosh.
What?
Ah! First of all, how do you get so many words in 15 minutes? So good.
Why
Oh my
did I
gosh.
say time was up? I should have just ignored the timer.
Right. Okay. So much good imagery. So much the good characters already. I love this guy. He calls her Peach. I just love him so much. She's pregnant,
Buford.
is what I
That's
Buford,
like
that's
the
right.
best name ever.
It
Buford.
is. I'm guessing she's pregnant because that's why he said the doctor told her to take breaks, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's something else.
I was thinking she was sick
Maybe.
and she didn't want anyone to know.
Yeah, that could possibly be it too. But I love that he's already
Will we
figuring
ever
it
know?
out. Probably not. I hope so. You gonna finish this writing, Jamie?
No. Well, because I don't seem to have any desire to finish anything anymore.
Oh.
I can't promise that. But immediately I was thinking she had some kind of, like, I thought arthritis right away, and that she was just going to get worse and declining health in some kind of a way. You know what I mean? I didn't really think that she was terminal, but it was not pregnancy. But I was
okay.
happy that you guessed that because I wanted people to wonder and think maybe
Right.
that was it. Right. So
Yeah. Well
mission
done.
accomplished. Yeah.
Yeah. Love that.
I think for me, the clue was she was wringing her hands and she didn't have her hand on her belly. I feel like if she was
Oh, yeah.
pregnant, she would have put her hand on her belly.
That's really good, actually, because what I even was thinking was maybe they were hurting her. And so she was like rubbing them because, you know, you get aches and joints and stuff like that.
Yeah. Liz says, she said, I thought she was pregnant too, but then didn't you mention she'd been married for 35 years? So maybe I missed.
Buford.
Buford has been married 35 years. That's right. So
to his crepe myrtle.
Oh, that's a great nickname. Love that.
I have a feeling that the women he likes are a fruit tree. Or a tree of some kind.
Yeah.
And all the other women he don't like, he probably calls them Miss Whoever.
Calls them by their real name, but the ones he likes, he has a fruit name for them. That's awesome.
I know. I love him. Like, this is worth writing just to keep him alive.
Right. Agreed. So, all right. Well, next week you can continue the story.
Maybe.
There you go. Yep, you got to write anyway, so you might as well continue in that world. I think that our chat is a little bit behind. SL Parent says that she loved the imagery in my story. That was so emotionally charged for a greeting at the door. I appreciate that. And Liz, we already know she's here because I already shared something of hers. But Purpose Behind the Pen says, "Aw, there's a character with my name, Amelia. Now we know your name. Now we know your name, Amelia. That's
Now I'm
awesome.
gonna like stalk authors named Amelia until I find your picture.
There you go." She also says about your writing, Jamie, it was so well written. Totally agree.
Oh, thank
Totally
you.
agree. Yep.
All right, Tina, what did you do with this prompt? 2 seats.
You know, I'm a little concerned about how similar mine is to yours in that I started with the sentence and the same holiday is mentioned. So
Oh, awesome. That's
That
great.
is awesome.
we were like mentally syncing or something.
That's
But
awesome.
other than that, it's not the same at all.
I copied off your paper, Tina.
Yours was okay. I'm just gonna go.
All right.
2 seats were vacant at the table, and since there were only 3 seats, that meant Detective Reese was having his breakfast alone for the 3rd day in a row. He scooped the O-shaped cereal into his mouth, wishing it were the bacon and eggs his wife had made him every morning of their marriage until that fateful day 3 years ago. She may have only left 3 days ago, but he'd lost her 3 years ago, the day their little girl went missing. His wife had taken her with her to Costco to buy supplies for Thanksgiving dinner, and as most 3-year-olds did, and I'm sorry, her name is 3 question marks. I don't know what her name is. 3 question marks had wanted to be a big girl and walk herself. From what she'd said, his wife had stopped to read a label, and when she looked up, 3 question marks was gone. She'd run frantically through the store, calling her name. Store security got involved and announced it over the store intercom. It wasn't until they checked the security cameras later that they saw her leaving the store, holding onto the hand of a man in a Carhartt jacket, jeans, extra tough boots, and a blue ball cap with the Alaska flag on it. Average height, average build, everything about him average. And not once had he looked up for the cameras to get a clear image of his face. Detective Reese sighed, his stomach turning sour. He went into the kitchen and dumped the half-empty bowl into the garbage disposal, leaning against the sink and looking out the window, down into the backyard, where the jungle gym stood, forlorn and rusting. He had to get out of this funk. He had 2 kids to find, and everyone was already looking at him like they expected him to crumble into pieces at any moment. Every time the chief called him in the office for an update, he expected him to tell him he was taking him off the case. "This is too close, Robert. You're taking it too personally." He gulped down the last of his lukewarm coffee and left the kitchen, heading down the hall toward their master bedroom. The door at the end of the hallway stood closed as it had for the last 3 years, and just as he did every time, he stopped and considered turning the knob. Wetness smeared his vision of the pink wooden cutout of 3 question marks name, and he turned away. As he stood in front of his closet, his mind refusing to remember why he was there, he contemplated moving into one of the rooms downstairs. Then the timer went off.
Oh, Tina. Oh, mercy.
I'm glad you didn't have her name, or that would have been really too horrible for me to endure at this early of a time in the day.
Agreed.
That I can't associate a name to this girl. But as far as like the writing goes, like O-shaped cereal, and then the rusting jungle gym, and just those kind of little details that you put, the mom stopping to look at a label and the pink cutout on the door. It's like you always know when to put in a detail, and it doesn't make me suffer through tedious loads of detail. I just really appreciate that. Your writing
Thanks.
is really good that way.
And we knew that your character had backstory and had some sort of pain, but like, oh, this is just, I mean, and it's good because of what he has to investigate. So it makes sense and like it's a good choice, but oh, heart-wrenching, man. So well done.
Thank you.
Really well done. Yeah. Liz Henderson agrees. She says heart-wrenching story though, but she said, oh, she said Tiger, named the little girl Tiger. if, you- if if you are new here, when Liz was pregnant with her last baby, we had a April Fool's Day episode where we chose the, that we were choosing the name of her baby was part of our episode, and we named her Tiger.
What an amazing callback.
That
That
could be
was
some
awesome.
comic relief in the midst of the grief.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Liz
awesome.
wins today.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well done, Tina.
Well
Thanks.
done. Yeah, even the description of the kidnapper, just the right amount of detail.
Mhm. Yeah, that's I think that to me, that's the most heart-wrenching part, was like to be able to see him and not do anything about it. To be able to
Mhm.
see him on camera
And it could be
and
anybody.
could be anybody. Like, oh,
Because for those of you who aren't Alaskan, you wouldn't know that everybody and their brother wears extra tough boots. Like that's part of the dress code. Like you wear extra tough boots and like a heavy Carhartt jacket in the winter. You just
Do
do.
they issue you those items as you're getting off the boat?
Probably. Well, plane, boat. Yeah, you have to have extra tough boots,
hmm,
which is a
Well,
brand name, but you know what I'm saying.
yeah, I know exactly
right.
what boots you're talking about. Yeah. Okay, well, that was super fun. I love that portion of the show. And next, we talk about what's next. What's next for you, ladies? Typically, it's writer related, but doesn't have to be. What's next for you, Jen?
Well, I am going to continue working on this outline. I'm gonna take a couple more of the courses. Some of the like little mini courses I've taken this so far this week is so they have a thing called AutoCrit 101. So I've done the planning and drafting. Some of their classes, some of their little videos are good. Some of them I feel are maybe for really newbie writers, but I'm trying to get to where the part of the course where they teach you the hands-on stuff inside their software. So I've done the planning and drafting, character development. They had a planner because I'm a planner, so they had a check-in. That's the other thing too about this writing thing is that if you're a planner, a plancer, or a pantser, there's a place for you in
Yeah,
this.
there's
And so,
3 teams, and then you can join
right,
all 3 teams if you want, but you, like, supposed to pick a team of
right.
who you are.
So anyway, I've been working my way through a whole bunch of the things, trying to learn the software and trying to um, get my outline ready to get some more writing done. So that's what's next for me is to continue the outlining.
Okay, well, my whole writer life has been backburnered, and it seems like every week that I'm able to join you, I feel inspired to maybe lift it off the back burner. If I'm not going to put it on the front burner, maybe put it on a trivet to the side.
Mhm.
But I do really miss. I'm starting to be to where I want, like the want is starting to come back, and not
Same,
just like I should, right?
right? Same here. Yep.
And so I'm really coveting all of your prayers for me, for that feeling to increase, um, and for the doubts or the depression component of like, what difference does it make, for that to diminish under the glaring, but I really want to get these people, these characters out for the world to enjoy, even if the world is just 1 or 2 people who happen to also enjoy what I write. So I just need and want that feeling to return, and I feel like it's on its way back. But it feels silly to be a part of a writer's podcast, and the only writing I do is our for this season of my life. You know.
Hmm. Well, we're glad that you're still here, Jamie, and we're still rooting for you because I think it's going to come back. You can't be as talented as you and not and like cut that off from the world, right? It's
I
Yeah,
going to come
appreciate
I
back.
agree.
I appreciate that. What's next for you, Tina Tane?
Well, I have a pretty exciting week coming up for my writing career. Number 1, I get my manuscript back from my book coach with all kinds of notes and an editorial an editorial letter, and there's going to be like a list of next steps that I should take to fix it, which is like I'm really looking forward to that part. And if I want to keep her as my coach, I can going forward to help me go through those next steps. And I'm seriously considering it just so I can, like, because of my number one learner, I feel like it'll make it like homework. It'll make it easier to do. And then maybe next time I can like say, okay, these were the steps I needed to take, and I'll just be able to do it. And
Mhm.
it won't be so painful and sloggy.
Mhm.
And then the second thing is the writing group that got formed when we had our writing group episode, and I put a thing in our group about who wants to be in a writing group. We have our first meeting on Thursday.
Oh, how
So
exciting.
I'm excited about that. I get to read what everybody submitted, and then we get to meet and talk about it.
That sounds like an amazing, amazing experience. I'm so happy to hear that you all found each other through our podcast. If you're looking for people to write with, post in our Facebook group and see if the day and time that you have available works for anybody else. Because
Mhm.
that's typically the biggest challenge is to
Mhm.
coordinate a time that works, right?
Right.
Go back and watch our episodes about how to start a writing group because there are things that you certainly should consider before you pull the trigger. But hey, it's an hour. And if you only listen to the meat of the podcast, it's like 20 minutes. But it can tell you perils and pitfalls to watch out for so that you could be happy with the group that you start. But that's 2 down and infinity to go. We would love to connect writers all across genres, all across the nation. And we'd love to see more groups birthed from our podcast. It makes us so happy to see you all connecting. All right. Any last words about this topic, ladies, or anything else?
Nope.
Okay, so that concludes this episode of the Christian Indie Writers Podcast. Until next time, may your pen be prolific, may your deadlines be met, and may all of your words honor Christ. Bye now.
Bye.